The Echo Chamber, Part 1, Ascension. The email arrived at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Marcus Chen had been at his desk for 14 hours, reviewing quarterly projections for the third time that week. At 34, he was the youngest VP candidate at Meridian Financial, a mid-sized investment firm with ambitions of breaking into the top tier. His office on the 42nd floor overlooked downtown Seattle, a view he'd earned through 7 years of strategic maneuvering, weekend work, and carefully cultivated relationships. The notification chimed softly. The sender was listed simply as well-wisher. No corporate domain, no name. Subject, regarding your promotion. Marcus's finger hovered over the touchpad. Corporate security had given 3 presentations that quarter alone about phishing attacks. But curiosity, that peculiar human weakness that bridged the gap between caution and catastrophe, won out. The message contained a single line. "They're not choosing you. Check Anderson's shared drive. Password, Red October 2024. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. James Anderson was the current CFO and chair of the executive committee. If anyone knew who was actually being considered for the VP position, it would be Anderson. He should have closed the email, should have reported it to IT, should have done a dozen things that would have prevented what came next. Instead, Marcus opened a private browser window. The credentials worked. He found himself looking at Anderson's personal file directory, a labyrinth of folders with cryptic names. His hands were trembling slightly as he navigated through quarterly reports, expense documents, and personnel files. Then he found it, a folder marked Exec Appointments Confidential. Inside were evaluations for 3 candidates. His name was there, alongside 2 others, Patricia Vega from the acquisitions team and David Stromberg, a lateral hire from Goldman Sachs who'd only been with the company for 8 months. Marcus clicked on his own file first. The evaluation was glowing. Terms like exceptional strategic thinking and demonstrated leadership appeared throughout. But the summary, written in Anderson's distinctive terse style, made his stomach drop. Strong candidate, but lacks the social capital for this position. Committee consensus leans toward Stromberg. His external network brings immediate value. Recommend Chen for next cycle. Next cycle? 2 years minimum. 2 years of watching someone else take the position he'd worked toward since business school. Marcus sat back, feeling the leather chair creak beneath him. The office was silent except for the ambient hum of the building's ventilation system. Through the window, Seattle glittered with the cold indifference of a city that ate ambition for breakfast. He knew he should log out, close the browser, forget he'd ever seen this. Instead, he downloaded all 3 files to his personal cloud storage. Just to review them, he told himself. To understand what Stromberg had that he didn't. To prepare better for the next opportunity. The download took 47 seconds. Marcus cleared his browser history, shut down his computer, and went home to his apartment in Capitol Hill, where he poured 3 fingers of scotch and stared at his reflection in the darkened window. He didn't know that his actions had already been recorded, that the well-wisher was watching, that every click, every download, every moment of weakness was being documented with the patience of a spider building a web. Part 2. Fracture. The presentation happened 3 days later. Marcus had been in morning meetings since 8 a.m., reviewing a potential acquisition target with the strategy team. He'd barely slept, spending his nights reviewing the downloaded files, making notes about Stromberg's supposed advantages. The more he read, the more the decision seemed political rather than merit-based. Stromberg knew people, had connections. That old, familiar story that Marcus, the son of immigrants who'd worked in a dry cleaning shop, had heard his entire career. He was in the middle of explaining a risk assessment model when his laptop screen flickered. At first, he thought it was a technical glitch, but then his presentation disappeared, replaced by something that made his blood freeze in his veins. It was his own face, captured from his computer's webcam. A timestamp in the corner showed the previous Tuesday night, 11 p.m. In the video, he was clearly navigating through Anderson's files, the folder names visible as he clicked through them. The conference room had gone silent. 6 pairs of eyes turned from the screen to Marcus. "What the hell is this?" Patricia Vega was the first to speak. Marcus fumbled with his laptop, trying to close the window, but nothing responded. The video continued playing, showing him downloading files, highlighting specific passages about the executive selection process. Then the screen split, showing chat logs he'd never written. Marcus C_personal. I have Anderson's files. Interested in knowing who's getting cut next quarter? Unknown user. How much? Marcus C_personal. Make an offer. The messages continued, detailing fictional negotiations for proprietary company information, complete with bank account numbers and transfer amounts. Marcus felt the room spinning. This isn't real. I didn't write any of this. You need to leave. Gerald Matsumoto, the senior director of operations, had stood up. His face was carved from granite. Right now, Marcus, we're calling security. Please, just let me explain. Security is on their way. Don't make this worse. Marcus looked around the table at people he'd worked with for years. Patricia wouldn't meet his eyes. 2 junior analysts were already backing toward the door. Only Gerald maintained eye contact, and what Marcus saw there was worse than anger. It was disappointment mixed with disgust. His phone buzzed. Should have stayed in your lane. 2 security guards appeared at the conference room door. Marcus knew both of them, had chatted with them countless times in the elevator, knew about Jimmy's daughter's soccer team and Carlos's night classes. Now they approached him with the careful distance reserved for threats. "Mr. Chen, we need you to come with us." The walk to the security office was the longest of Marcus's life. People stared as he passed, the whispers already spreading through the office like wildfire. By the time they reached the windowless room where corporate security conducted their investigations, his hands were shaking. They took his laptop, his phone, his badge, asked him to wait while they confirmed some things. He sat in that room for 3 hours, playing the scenario over and over in his mind. Someone had hacked him, set him up. But who and why? When the door finally opened, it wasn't security who entered. It was Andrea Voss, general counsel for Meridian Financial, along with 2 people Marcus didn't recognize. "Mr. Chen, I'm Agent Sarah Park, FBI Cybercrimes Division." The woman held up credentials. "We need to ask you some questions about unauthorized access to confidential corporate files and the attempted sale of proprietary information." The FBI. They'd called the FBI. Marcus felt his carefully constructed world collapse around him like a building in slow-motion demolition. Part 3. Dissolution. The investigation lasted 6 weeks and destroyed Marcus systematically, piece by piece. The evidence was overwhelming. Server logs showed his employee credentials had been used to access Anderson's files. The download was traced to his workstation. The chat logs, while encrypted, were recovered from servers that Marcus's IP address had connected to. A cryptocurrency wallet in his name showed deposits totaling $45,000 from an untraceable source. His protests that he'd been set up sounded exactly like what a guilty person would say. Meridian fired him, immediately of course. The termination letter cited gross misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, and violation of confidentiality agreements. His stock options, worth nearly $200,000, were forfeit. The company filed a civil suit seeking damages for reputational harm and the cost of their security investigation. The FBI investigation was even worse. They seized his computers, his phone records, his financial statements. They interviewed his neighbors, his girlfriend, his elderly parents who barely understood what was happening. Special Agent Park was thorough and relentless, treating Marcus's claims of being hacked with the skeptical patience of someone who'd heard it all before. "Mr. Chen, we've examined your devices. There's no evidence of unauthorized access. No malware, no remote administration tools, no indication that anyone but you was controlling your computer that night. Then they were good enough to cover their tracks. Or there's nothing to cover because you did this yourself." The media picked up the story within days. "Meridian executive arrested in data theft scheme," read the headline in the Seattle Times. The article mentioned his upcoming promotion, suggesting greed as a motive. LinkedIn was worse. His profile became a cautionary tale shared across business school forums and corporate training programs. His girlfriend, Emma, lasted 2 weeks before moving out. "I can't do this, Marcus. I don't even know if I believe you anymore. You think I'm capable of this? I think I don't know what you're capable of. That's worse." His parents were the only ones who never doubted him, but their faith somehow made it worse. He could see the confusion in his mother's eyes, the way his father's shoulders seemed to carry a new weight. They'd been so proud of their son, the executive. Now they brought him containers of food he could barely eat and sat in his apartment making small talk about nothing while the walls closed in. Marcus spent his days obsessively reviewing everything, trying to understand how someone had done this. The well-wisher email had been sent through an anonymizing service, untraceable. The password to Anderson's files had worked, which meant either someone had cracked them or had inside access. The fabricated chat logs were sophisticated, containing details about his communication style that would have required studying his actual messages. Someone had studied him, learned him, then destroyed him with surgical precision. But who and why? Part 4. Obsession. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for October 15th. Marcus's lawyer, David Reeves, a public defender who looked barely older than an intern, was blunt about his chances. "The prosecution has a strong case. We can maybe argue down to a lesser charge, get you probation instead of prison time." "I didn't do this." "I believe you feel that way, Marcus, but feelings aren't evidence. Someone hacked me. Someone set this up." David closed his folder with a sigh. "Then we need to find out who, because right now you're looking at 3 to 5 years federal time." Marcus had already spent his savings on private investigators. 2 different firms had taken his money and come back with nothing. The trail was too clean, too professional. Whoever had done this knew exactly how to hide their tracks. He became a hermit in his Capitol Hill apartment, surviving on savings that were rapidly depleting. His unemployment claim had been denied, termination for cause. His professional contacts stopped returning calls. When he tried to network on LinkedIn, he found he'd been blocked by almost everyone from Meridian. He spent 18 hours a day on his laptop, teaching himself about cybersecurity, hacking techniques, digital forensics. He haunted forums where white-hat hackers discussed vulnerabilities and exploits. He learned about social engineering, spear phishing, man-in-the-middle attacks. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The attack had been too sophisticated for a random hacker, too targeted, too personal. Someone had known exactly when he'd be at his desk late at night, exactly what bait would make him click. Someone had anticipated his ambition, his anxiety about the promotion, his willingness to cross a small ethical line. Someone who knew him. Marcus made a list of everyone at Meridian who had reason to damage him. Patricia Vega, who'd been competing for the same position. But she'd seemed as shocked as everyone during the presentation. David Stromberg, eliminating competition? Possible, but he barely knew Marcus. James Anderson, protecting secrets? But what secrets? Then Marcus remembered something. A conversation 3 months earlier, at a company happy hour. He'd been slightly drunk, complaining about the slow pace of promotions to someone from IT. A guy named Derek? Darren? The name escaped him, but he remembered the conversation had been unusually personal. The IT guy had asked probing questions about his ambitions, his frustrations, his plans. He'd thought it was just small talk. Now he realized it might have been reconnaissance. Marcus pulled up the Meridian employee directory from before his termination. He scrolled through the IT department, looking at faces. There, Derek Simmons, network security analyst. Marcus clicked on his profile. The photo showed a thin man in his late 20s with sharp features and the kind of intense eyes that suggested too much screen time. He dug deeper, using Google, LinkedIn, Facebook. Derek Simmons had worked at Meridian for 3 years. Before that, he'd been at a small cybersecurity firm that had gone bankrupt. Before that, college at University of Washington. No red flags, no obvious connection. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling. He remembered Derek's questions now, how they'd seemed casual at the time, but were actually quite specific. Who do you think deserves the VP spot? Would you ever bend the rules to get ahead? What would you do if you found out the selection process was rigged? Marcus had answered honestly, fueled by whiskey and frustration. He'd given Derek a roadmap of his insecurities and ambitions. The next question was why? Why would Derek Simmons want to destroy him? Marcus started investigating Derek's background more thoroughly. It took him 3 days of searching through old news articles and social media posts before he found it. A small piece in the UW student newspaper from 8 years earlier. Student suspended for hacking allegations. Derek Simmons, a junior in the computer science program, has been suspended for allegedly accessing confidential admissions records. Simmons denies the charges, claiming he was demonstrating security vulnerabilities to help the university improve their systems. The case is under investigation. The article was short, but there was a longer piece in a follow-up edition. Suspended student's brother commits suicide. Thomas Simmons, 24, was found dead in his apartment last Thursday, 2 weeks after being terminated from his position at Cascade Investments for alleged misconduct. His brother, Derek Simmons, recently suspended from UW for hacking allegations, told reporters that his brother had been framed by colleagues jealous of his rapid advancement. They destroyed him for being good at his job, Derek Simmons said. He couldn't live with the shame. Marcus felt his hands go cold as he read the article 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Cascade Investments had been acquired by Meridian Financial 6 years ago. Thomas Simmons had been an aspiring executive, destroyed by false allegations, who'd killed himself rather than face prison time. Derek Simmons had gotten a job at the company that had absorbed his brother's employer. And now Derek Simmons had destroyed Marcus Chen in exactly the same way. Part 5. Confrontation. Marcus knew he should go to the FBI with this information, show Agent Park what he'd found, let the professionals handle it. But he also knew how it would sound. A desperate man grasping at conspiracy theories, trying to shift blame to another victim. He needed proof, real, concrete evidence that Derek Simmons had hacked him. The plan formed over 72 sleepless hours. It was risky, probably illegal, and could make everything worse. But Marcus had already lost his career, his reputation, his savings, and his future. What else was there to lose? He started by creating a fake identity, Jason Moore, a freelance journalist working on a story about corporate espionage. He designed a simple website, populated a LinkedIn profile with stock photos and fabricated credentials, and crafted a compelling pitch about exposing how companies frame employees for cybersecurity breaches to avoid liability. Then he reached out to Derek Simmons through a personal email address he'd found in an old forum post. Mr. Simmons, I'm working on an investigative piece about corporate cybersecurity and came across your brother's case. I believe he was innocent and that Cascade Investments used him as a scapegoat for their own security failures. I'd like to tell his story properly and possibly reopen the investigation. Would you be willing to speak with me? Best regards, Jason Moore. The response came within 6 hours. Mr. Moore, I'd be very interested in speaking with you.
My brother was innocent. They destroyed him to protect their own incompetence. I've spent years trying to get people to listen. When can we meet? They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Fremont, neutral territory. Marcus arrived early, wearing glasses and a baseball cap, a cheap recording device in his jacket pocket. His hands were shaking as he ordered coffee he wouldn't drink. Derek arrived exactly on time. In person, he looked smaller than Marcus remembered, maybe 5'7", slim, with the pale complexion of someone who spent their life indoors. But his eyes were sharp and calculating, constantly assessing. Mr. Moore? Derek extended a hand. Derek, thanks for meeting me. Marcus's voice was steady despite his racing heart. They settled into a corner booth. Derek had brought a folder of documents, news clippings, legal filings, emails from his brother's case. He spread them on the table like evidence at a trial. They said Thomas stole client information, Derek began, his voice tight with old anger. But he didn't. Someone hacked his account, made it look like he'd accessed files he never touched. The evidence was perfect, too perfect. But nobody wanted to investigate because it was easier to blame Thomas than admit their security was garbage. How do you know he was innocent? Marcus asked carefully. Because I looked at the evidence myself. I'm in cybersecurity. I know what a real hack looks like versus a setup. Someone with inside access to their systems created false logs, planted evidence, made Thomas the fall guy. And when he tried to prove his innocence, they just called him a liar. Derek's hands clenched around his coffee cup. He couldn't handle it. The shame, the publicity, the way everyone looked at him like he was a criminal. 2 months after they fired him, he killed himself. Left a note saying he couldn't live in a world where the truth didn't matter. Marcus felt a strange sympathy, despite everything.
Derek's grief was real, his pain palpable, but it had curdled into something toxic, something that demanded retribution. I'm sorry about your brother, Marcus said quietly, but can I ask you something? Cascade Investments was acquired by Meridian Financial, right? Derek's eyes flickered, just for a moment, but Marcus caught it. Yes, the same executives who destroyed my brother went on to bigger positions. Did you ever think about getting revenge, making them pay for what they did? Every day, Derek leaned forward. But I'm not like them. I believe in justice, not vigilante bullshit. Marcus decided to push. What if I told you I have evidence that Meridian is still framing employees, that they just did it to someone else using the same playbook they used on your brother? Derek's expression was carefully neutral. I'd say that sounds like a story worth investigating. His name is Marcus Chen, Former VP candidate accused of stealing confidential files and selling proprietary information. The evidence against him is perfect, too perfect, almost like someone with inside access created it. Derek's face remained impassive, but Marcus saw his jaw tighten. I don't know that case. Really? Because you work in IT at Meridian. You'd have access to all the systems needed to frame someone just like your brother was framed. I think this meeting is over. Derek started gathering his papers. I'm not Jason Moore, Marcus said quietly. I'm Marcus Chen. Derek froze, his hand hovering over the documents. You destroyed my life because of what happened to your brother, but I had nothing to do with that. I didn't even work at Cascade. I was finishing business school when your brother died. Derek slowly raised his eyes to meet Marcus's. The grief was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, a cold, calculating satisfaction. You're recording this, Derek said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Good. Derek settled back into his seat.
Because I want you to understand something, Marcus. You didn't personally destroy my brother, but you're exactly like the people who did. Ambitious, willing to bend the rules when it suits you, ready to sacrifice anything for a promotion. So you admit it? You hacked me? I gave you a choice. The email, the password, that was all real. Anderson really did have those files, and you really were being passed over. You could have reported it to IT like you were supposed to. Instead, you chose to access confidential files without authorization. You made the choice to cross that line. You set me up. The chat logs, the cryptocurrency, all of it was fabricated. Was it? Derek smiled thinly. Or did I simply amplify what was already there? You really did access those files, Marcus. You really did download confidential information to your personal cloud. Everything I showed in that presentation was true. I just added context that revealed what kind of person you really are. People like you are why innocent people's lives get destroyed. No, Marcus. People like you are why innocent people's lives get destroyed. You saw an opportunity to cheat, to get ahead by violating someone's privacy, and you took it. I just made sure there were consequences. Your brother's death was tragic, but that doesn't give you the right to play God with other people's lives. Derek's composure finally cracked. My brother was innocent. He never violated anything, never crossed any line, and they destroyed him anyway. You actually did what they accused you of, and you want sympathy? I looked at some files I shouldn't have. I didn't sell anything. I didn't try to profit from it. Yet. You didn't profit from it yet. Give an ambitious man an inch, and he'll take a career. They sat in tense silence, the coffee shop bustling around them, oblivious to the confrontation happening in the corner booth. The FBI will figure this out, Marcus said finally. They'll find evidence you hacked me. No, they won't, because I was very careful. Every action was designed to look like something you did yourself. And even if they did somehow prove I was involved, which they won't, you still access those files. You still cross that line. At best, we'd both go down. Derek stood up, gathering his documents. My brother's death taught me something important. The system doesn't punish the guilty. It punishes whoever is easiest to blame. You learned that lesson the hard way, and honestly, I'm not sorry. He walked out, leaving Marcus alone with his recording device and the ashes of his hopes. Part 6. Resolution. Marcus went to Agent Park the next day with everything, the recording, his research on Derek Simmons, the connection to Thomas Simmons's case. She listened with the same skeptical patience she'd shown before. This is interesting, Mr. Chen, but it's not proof of anything. Simmons admits you accessed the files, which we already knew. The rest is just his opinion about your motivations. He set me up, the chat logs, the cryptocurrency. He never admits to that on your recording. He dances around it, sure, but there's no confession. What about his brother's case, the pattern? Tragic, but not illegal. Lots of people lose family members unjustly. That doesn't make them hackers. Marcus felt his last hope crumbling. So there's nothing you can do? Agent Park was silent for a long moment. Off the record, I believe you. Or at least I believe there's more to this than we can prove. But belief doesn't hold up in court. Facts do.
And the facts say you accessed confidential files without authorization. So I'm just supposed to accept this? I'm supposed to tell you to take the plea deal your lawyer negotiated. 2 years probation, no jail time. You put this behind you and rebuild your life. And Derek gets away with it? Sometimes that's how it works, Mr. Chen. I'm sorry. The plea hearing was on a cold morning in November. Marcus stood before the judge, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, and accepted responsibility for unauthorized access to confidential corporate files. The charges related to selling were dropped. He was sentenced to 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and a $10,000 fine. Outside the courthouse, David Reeves clapped him on the shoulder. Could have been worse. You'll survive this. Marcus wasn't sure he agreed. The next year was a study in diminishment. He worked a series of temporary jobs, nothing in finance, nothing with responsibility. His name was poison in the corporate world. He moved to a cheaper apartment in Renton, cut his expenses to bare minimum. His parents visited every Sunday, bringing food and trying to pretend everything was normal. He thought about Derek Simmons constantly, imagined him still working at Meridian, probably planning his next act of retribution against whatever executive he'd decided deserved punishment. The injustice of it ate at Marcus like acid. But slowly, something shifted. He started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people fight wrongful termination cases. He understood their frustration, their rage at systems that seemed designed to crush individuals while protecting institutions. He became good at it, finding small victories in the details. He also started a blog, anonymously at first, about his experience.
The setup: How I Lost Everything to a Cybersecurity Vigilante. He laid out everything: Derek's story, his own mistakes, the blurred line between justice and revenge. The response was unexpected. People reached out with similar stories. Employees who'd been framed, executives who'd been destroyed by planted evidence, families torn apart by false allegations. The blog grew into a support network, then an advocacy group. Marcus called it Second Chances. 18 months after his sentencing, a journalist from Wired contacted him. She'd been investigating corporate cybersecurity abuses and found several cases with similarities to Marcus's experience. Too perfect evidence, scapegoat employees, suspicious circumstances. She wanted to include his story in a larger investigation. The article was published in March and went viral. The New Vigilantes, When IT Security Goes Too Far, detailed a pattern of revenge-driven attacks by cybersecurity professionals targeting companies they believed had wronged them or others. It featured Derek Simmons prominently, connecting his brother's death to Marcus's case and 2 other incidents at Meridian. The FBI reopened their investigation. This time with resources and expertise focused specifically on proving Derek's involvement. They found what they'd missed before: tiny anomalies in the server logs, fragments of deleted code, digital fingerprints that, when examined collectively, pointed to someone with Derek's access and skill set. Marcus's phone rang on a Tuesday morning, almost exactly 2 years after the well-wisher email. "Mr. Chen, this is Agent Park. I thought you'd want to know. We arrested Derek Simmons this morning. Computer fraud, identity theft, unauthorized access to protected systems. Looks like he was planning something similar with another executive. We caught him before he could pull the trigger." Marcus felt a strange emptiness instead of triumph.
Will this clear me? Potentially.
We're filing paperwork to vacate your conviction based on new evidence. It'll take time, but you should be cleared of all charges. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank that journalist who didn't give up. After he hung up, Marcus sat in his small apartment and thought about circles, how pain created more pain, how one brother's destruction led to another man's vengeance, which led to his own destruction, which led to, what? Justice or just more pain? He thought about Derek, who'd loved his brother enough to spend years planning revenge, who'd been smart enough to almost pull it off, who genuinely believed he was balancing some cosmic scale of justice. He thought about Thomas Simmons, whose innocence or guilt he'd never really know for certain, but whose death had sent ripples through time that touched strangers' lives years later. Mostly, he thought about the moment he'd clicked on that email, the choice that Derek was right about. Marcus had made it, had crossed that line, even if he'd been manipulated into doing it. The revenge was disproportionate, but the vulnerability Derek had exploited was real. That uncomfortable truth would stay with him forever. 6 months later, Marcus's conviction was officially vacated. Meridian Financial, facing a public relations nightmare and legal exposure, offered him a settlement, full back pay, restored stock options, and a formal apology. They did not offer him his job back. He didn't want it. Instead, he took the settlement money and used it to incorporate Second Chances as a proper nonprofit, helping people who'd been wrongfully terminated fight back. His first case was pro bono, a single mother in Portland who'd been accused of embezzlement by an employer who'd actually stolen her ideas. He won. The victory was small, didn't undo what he'd lost, didn't bring back the career he'd worked so hard to build. But it felt like something, a purpose that had grown from pain, a direction that had emerged from destruction. On quiet nights, Marcus still thought about that Tuesday when everything changed, about the email he shouldn't have opened, the files he shouldn't have downloaded, the ambition that had made him vulnerable to manipulation. He thought about Derek Simmons, serving 8 years in federal prison for crimes that were technically about computer fraud, but were really about grief that had fermented into obsession. 2 lives destroyed by one death, connected by the brittle thread of choices made and consequences faced. Marcus had learned something that Derek never would, that justice and revenge weren't the same thing, that surviving wasn't the same as winning, and that sometimes rebuilding from ruins meant constructing something entirely different from what had been destroyed. He didn't know if that wisdom was worth the price he'd paid to earn it. But it was what he had, and he was determined to use it. The echo chamber of ambition and revenge had gone silent. What remained was just Marcus Chen, neither victim nor villain, trying to build something meaningful from the wreckage of his carefully planned life. It would have to be enough. The end.